Good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County and our co-sponsors, I want to welcome you to this forum with candidates running for the first and second House positions for Legislative District 28. My name is Noel Higgins, and my co-moderator is Bailey Womble, a student at the University of Washington, Tacoma.
Before I begin the forum, I'd like to give the land acknowledgement. The League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County wishes to acknowledge that we gather on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish peoples, surrounded by their traditional waters in the shadow of Mount Tacoma. We actively seek inclusion and respectful partnerships that honor Indigenous cultures, histories, identities, and current realities.
The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that for the past 102 years has encouraged the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We also influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League is open to any person age 16 or older who subscribes to the purpose and policy of the League, including men as well as women. Candidate forums provide an opportunity for the public to compare and contrast the candidates before voting in the general election. All candidates were invited to this forum, and they are here. Let me introduce for House seat in ballot order. For House seat 1, Mari Levitt and Gabe Sackwitz. And in ballot order for House seat number 2, Dan Bernowski and Susanna Kyleman. Welcome.
The candidates have been given ground rules in advance, which include, among other provisions, that they will adhere to the rules of common courtesy and will not comment on the other candidates, but will focus on the issues, and that there will be no other recordings made of this forum. Could we please confirm that each of you has agreed to these rules? You can confirm by a nod or a thumbs up. Excellent, thank you. We have already received many questions from constituents of the district, and we appreciate the participation. If you in the audience tonight have additional questions for the candidates, you may text them to this number, 253-224-5691. Again, that was 253-224-5691. Questions must be directed to all candidates and may be consolidated or reworded. We will cover as many of the questions as we can. Candidates will be timed as they answer and may finish their sentences if they receive the signal to end, but may not continue to speak after that. The opportunity to answer the question first will rotate among the candidates, and the closing statements will be given in the opposite order of opening statements. Candidates, be sure to keep your screen on gallery view so you can see the timekeeper. Please keep yourself muted until it is your time to speak.
Let's begin with opening statements by candidates who will have 2 minutes each. And in ballot order, please, Mari Levitt, if you would begin.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Mari Levitt and I have the honor to serve you in the Washington State House of Representatives, representing the 28th Legislative District. It's my pleasure to be with you tonight. I'd like to thank the League for hosting this forum and to all of you for engaging and taking time away from your friends and family to participate. Like many, I first came to Pierce County as a child in a military family, and I knew early on that this was going to be my home, and that's why I'm raising my family here and have dedicated my career to this community. As a former college administrator and human services professional, I've dedicated my career to local families. My husband and I own a small health-related business, have 7 children, including 2 adopted from the foster care system. I've served on several boards, including a trustee of the Pierce County Accountable Communities of Health, chair of the Pierce County Ethics Commission, local PTSA president of a local school district, as well as an advisory board member of a local YMCA. And I'm running to fight for our local priorities, given my proven record of working together in our shared values. I'll continue fighting for safe, strong, and sound communities, including additional resources for law enforcement and training, dedicated funding for treatment and behavioral health and addiction services, and support for crime victims and survivors. I'll continue to work in education to be an advocate and champion for career and technical education training, ensuring that we expand programs for youth, military members and their military spouses, as well as workers displaced by this pandemic. And I'll continue to be a voice for small businesses, cutting red tape, ensuring economic recovery and success, and providing opportunities for women, veterans, people of color, often deterred from creating jobs and opportunities in this community. As your state representative, I'll focus on people, not a partisan agenda, because I think that's what we need more of in our state legislature. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mary Levitt. Next, opening statement from Gabe Sackwitz, please.
Hello. So I would like to give a big super thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. My name is Gabe Sackwitz, and I'm working to become your next state representative for District 28, Position 1. Next month, my wife and I will be celebrating our 16th year anniversary. We have raised 3 kiddos into adulthood and are currently raising our 4th and youngest child. Right now, I am currently a teacher and volunteer rescue firefighter. I was a former deputy sheriff and a combat veteran of the United States Marine Corps. I have a bachelor's degree in mathematics and a master's degree in human behavior. And, I can't continue to stand by and watch our communities decay into lawlessness. We should not be witnessing these open air drug scenes and mentally ill citizens camping on the streets. This is completely unacceptable and it endangers everyone. I understand the struggle of trying to support a family when the cost of living is expensive. It's kind of been my whole life. Cost of living has always been really expensive. I've had many humbling experiences just trying to find, a full-time job. I believe in doing the best you can and never giving up and just taking it step by step. We need leaders that serve the people, not career politicians. And allow me the opportunity to serve the 28th. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabe. Dan Bernowski, your opening statement, please.
Well, thanks everyone for the opportunity to be here and to speak. I am Dan Bernowski, and I currently serve as your Position 2, 28th District House of Representative. I've served 6 years in the Washington Army National Guard, served 22 years in the fire department locally here in Lakewood and University Place with West Pierce, and now I have the honor and privilege to serve you as your one of your State House of Representative members, and I'm looking to go back to continue working on the issues that we care about most. We have a lot of priorities, but certainly some of my priorities are probably some of the priorities that you share, making sure that we have access to affordable health care, making sure that our kids have access to the best education they possibly can, making sure that our future generations have access to good paying jobs and careers that are going to fulfill them over the lives of their work life. And I also want to make sure that we continue to have a robust and functioning transportation system so we can get to work, school, our healthcare appointments, take care of our kids and take care of our folks. Certainly times are tough, and I recognize that. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us as we continue to work to combat things like our changing climate, as we continue to work towards cleaning up our environment overall to make sure we all have a healthy place to live, clean air to breathe, healthy, clean water to drink. But we also need to continue to work on making sure that there's enough housing that we can afford to, that we can continue to be able to afford to live in the communities that we grew up in and that we love so much. Certainly, I look forward to working collaboratively, not only with all of you that are attending this meeting, but with my colleagues in the legislature and at all levels of government, regardless of what their political party or political affiliation. I think that's where some of the best work gets done, and I'm committed to continuing that work on your behalf, and I'd be honored to have your vote. Thank you so much for having me here tonight again.
Thank you, Dan. Susanna Kyleman, your opening statement, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susanna Kyleman, candidate for State Representative Position 2 in the 20th District. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and anyone watching tonight. I also came to Lakewood, Washington after my father retired from military service and later put on the uniform myself and served 6 years in in the reserves here at McCord. My mom is a Korean immigrant and raised my sisters and I on her own. We watched her overcome racism and sexism to eventually become a small business owner. My dad is a World War II veteran, and I volunteered for 2 deployments as a medic. I still volunteered to help veterans during and after service, as well as sit on the board for Women in Bioscience, which seeks equity for women in life sciences. I've dedicated the past 23 years to improve and expand treatment options and protect patients. But this is not about me. This is about the past 2 years and the consequences of failed policies that have made you less safe and gas and groceries more expensive. I've heard and seen firsthand from law enforcement, firemen, and first responders that criminals are getting braver every day, and the number of victims and the effects of lawlessness are immeasurable. We had a surplus and your taxes and costs still increased, yet our veterans, homeless, mentally ill, and addicts continue to suffer, and this population continues to grow. I will continue to build relationships and collaborate to treat the core of all the adversity we're facing. I'll always do what's right for the people of our district, find common ground, and ensure there is a balance so that we can responsibly adapt today and find lasting solutions for the future. We can provide resources, good policy, and have accountability of both. I'm running because after knocking on thousands of doors and meeting you, I know we are more alike than different. We are good, and that's worth fighting for. I'd be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susanna.
Let's begin with questions, which have been developed by the League of Women Voters with input by our co-sponsoring organizations. Candidates will have 90 seconds to answer. And our first question will be, the state's tax structure remains the most regressive in the country. What measures would you support to make the structure more equitable and less regressive? For this question, we're going to start with Gabe Sackwitz.
I mean, just simply making it as fair as possible. That's pretty much it. You know, that's what it means to be equitable. It's just to be fair and as balanced as possible. So that's it.
Thank you. Next will be Dan Bernowski.
Thank you so much for the question. And there is no question that our tax system in the state of Washington continues to need work to make it more fair and make it to where we have an economy that works for everybody. Certainly, there are inequities in how things are currently set up with you know, how we rely so heavily on property tax and sales tax here in the state, which is why, you know, I'm proud to have voted on good policy that's going to provide relief to people. So policy like the Working Families Tax Credit that provides a rebate for lower income families to make sure that when they do buy things at the rate that they buy things, that they're refunded. And so that way, someone like me who is a little bit more affluent can go ahead and continue to pay my fair share to make sure that we all have the opportunity to succeed. And certainly, you know, the wealthy folks in our state can continue to afford to pay their fair share as well. You know, the reason folks had the opportunity to be so successful here in the state of Washington is because our forefathers, our ancestors, and the people that came before us made wise investments in things like infrastructure to make it to where our economy functions so well. So it's only fair that those wealthy individuals in the state continue to pay their fair share, so that way the burden of taxes isn't felt disproportionately by lower income people. So that's what I'm going to continue to work on as long as I'm in the legislature, to continue to make the tax code as fair as possible. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next will be Susanna Kyleman.
Thank you for the question. So as I go door knocking, everyone is concerned about the cost of living. As a result, I sought the endorsement of the concerned taxpayers of Washington State. Food costs are up 15 to 47%. Drivers related fees are 400% increased. Electricity, utilities, everything's expensive, and we're tracking to have the highest gas tax in the nation. Credits are great, but when you have inflation and wages that are not reasonable, that's not equitable. Each city in the 28th has a local and state sales tax that's higher than the national average, and I'll fight for tax relief. We are the only state out of all the blue states that have not given any of the surplus back to the people. So let's act responsibly now, while also seeking sustainable long-term solutions. The first thing I'd like to do is, with any task, make sure that our taxes are going towards things that are actually working. And if there's no indicators to measure that effectiveness, then we need to put those in place to ensure that there's no wasteful spending. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, Mari Levitt.
Thank you so much for the question. And I was proud to support the Working Families Tax Credit to give back dollars to our most vulnerable in our community. And I think that's an important measure that I would hope to expand. I was proud to support an expansion for a property tax exemption for our seniors and our disabled veterans who have given to our country and our community, and expand that a couple of years ago, and also expand the eligibility. I also think that we need to continue to work on the property tax increase for our small businesses. Our small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and providing a B&O tax relief is important. We did that this past session, but I think we need to do more. And so it's an honor to get to work on these, and I look forward to the working tax group who will come back with recommendations to take a look of how we can make sure that our lowest income earners are not paying the highest share of taxes in our district and certainly in our state. And we need to balance that and right size it to ensure that we can offer these opportunities of exemptions, but then also support our small businesses. For example, I had a bill this past session that will be bringing it back to raise the limit for personal property tax exemption for our smallest businesses, which would cover about 90% of our businesses, from 12,000 to 100,000. It's all of those efforts combined in a collective format to make sure that we are addressing our tax structure holistically and addressing and making sure that we're supporting our businesses and supporting our most vulnerable and our working class families and vote those that are our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Here's a question from the audience. In this district, the 28th district includes an area of South Puget Sound with several islands and miles of shoreline. Do you have legislative goals with regard to water quality and shoreline management issues? And we'll start this with Dan Bernowski, please.
Well, great. Thanks for starting with me. Just a quick heads up to the league. People are trying to get into the forum right now. And for whatever reason, the Zoom feed is not letting people into the forum. I don't know if it's closed or you need to admit people individually, but I've had at least 2 text messages from people saying they can't get in.
Thank you for letting me know. I'll see what I can do.
Thanks. Since it's on to me, yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of policies that we are thinking about that will clean up our shorelines and clean up our water quality. I'm proud to say that myself and my seatmate, Rep. Levitt, made good investments over the past biennium in cleaning up our groundwater. You might have heard of PFAS chemicals, forever chemicals that are into our watershed. Those came from firefighting foams, mainly used on JBLM over the past 50 or so years. Those chemicals don't go away. We've made robust investments in cleaning up our groundwater so that way nobody has to drink water, whether you live in Lakewood, DuPont, Steilacoom, any of the surrounding areas. We all share the same watershed. So now we've installed scrubbers with our capital budget monies to remove those PFAS chemicals before you grab water from the tap. Something that I'm working on personally for our shoreline is we have an issue with derelict vessels. You might have seen boats beached on the shores up and down Puget Sound here in the 28th district. When those boats get beached, they need to get cleaned up. We voted on money to make sure the Department of Natural Resources has the resources they need to pick up and dispose of those boats properly. But also we need to increase the timelines when DNR is able to pick up those boats and dispose of them properly before fuel, oil, paints, varnishes, etc., from derelict vessels contaminating our environment. So it's absolutely something that's on our forefront, and I will continue to work on this, cleaning up our waterfront and our drinking water. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Dan. Next, Susanna Kyleman, please.
Sure, thanks for the question. So anything pertaining to the environment, the quality of drinking water, to prevent any further recession of our shorelines is extremely important. I look forward to learning more about these issues. Of course, it's at the forefront of my mind. Every time I go door knocking, people talk about environmental issues, and it varies depending on where they live. And because they live there and they're impacted the most, they should also have input. I know on Day Island, their concerns with their shoreline are a little bit different than the people in Steilacoom, but I look forward to working with all of the agencies, union and non-union, to make sure that we're doing our best to protect and preserve our water and our shorelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. Mari Levitt, please.
Thank you so much for the question. And I will echo what Representative Bernowski talked about, of making sure that we have clean water and air. And that's, of course, on our shoreline as well in the 28th, as we have many shorelines. And we're lucky to have one of the most beautiful districts, and making sure that we are getting rid of those chemicals in PFAS, but also in chemicals in the products that we use in our homes that get down there, making sure we have a great infrastructure in our sewer system to make sure that our sewer and elements of that are not getting in the water. I think we have to work really carefully for shoreline mitigation with our local jurisdictions, including Pierce County and our local cities, to make sure that they have planning processes in place so that they're reviewing plans when things are built to make sure that it's not impacting the shore. I think, I was really proud to get over $1 million over at Titlow to make sure that we had a salmon restoration project, working with BNSF, working with the county, working with Metro Parks to ensure that we were being good stewards, not only of our shorelines, but our environment, to make sure that our salmon can spawn and they can do what they need to do in order to continue our environment in the way that we expect for my children and my grandchildren. And so I think it's a combination of shoreline mitigation, proper planning, strong planning with our local jurisdiction and cities, and making sure that we're looking at each project and each area with a fine lens to ensure that we're being proper stewards of our environment, but then also protecting the property and the homes in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mari. Gabe Sackwitz, please.
Yeah, so we should be doing everything we can to make sure that our water resources are good to go. We shouldn't be doing anything that pollutes it or damages anything whatsoever. And just working with everybody and giving the resources that are needed in order to handle these issues. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you. Our next question is another audience question. How will you work with your colleagues in the other party to find solutions? And first to get answer will be Susanna Kylman.
Thanks for this question. So I'm pretty fortunate to have a lot of Democrat personal friends on my inner circle and some Democrats that are voting for me this year. And it's really great because they are going after the issues. They're not voting by party. They're looking at the issues that are on the ballot. And that's just my way of life naturally, as I source information and advice from all different people. And it's never going to be my position to speak for someone. I would rather have the position that they are brought to the table and can speak for themselves. So I look forward to having genuine relationships in and outside of the Capitol with people that I work with to make Washington State a better place for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Mari Levitt.
Thank you so much for the question. And I'm really proud. I have a strong record of working with all folks. And I will always work with anybody who's got a good idea to advance good policy for the district of the 28th. And I have a strong record. The majority of my bills that I've sponsored have been endorsed and supported by Republicans and Democrats alike, and not just one or two, but in a strong bipartisan way, and voted off the floor and signed into law by governor. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of many of my legislative Republican colleagues' bills as they advance through the legislature and supporting their good work, because no party has the great corner on all good ideas. I'm also really proud, and I'll give you an example of working with a Republican colleague of going to Austin, Texas on a housing trip this past September to take a look at how do we address housing and homelessness in Pierce County, and how do we work together with our local jurisdictions and as partners in order to advance good policy. So again, I have a strong track record of working both Republicans and Democrats alike. I'm proud to be supported by both because I have a proven record. It's not just what I will do, it's what I have done, and really proud of the work and the bills that I've advanced and also sponsored, working with my colleagues and listening to their voices, whether from business to labor to all different experiences, to make sure that we're crafting good policy for the residents of the 28th and the state of Washington. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Gabe Sackwitz.
Yeah, so it's super important to be able to build rapport and lines of communication with anybody and everybody. Whether you're Team Democrat or you're Team Republican, it's like you have to establish relationships. And fortunately for me, I've been in a lot of skill sets or professions that I've had to build rapport with people that absolutely hate me, and I've been able to accomplish that. And it's a hard thing to do, but the number one thing to do is to never let pride and ego dictate the situation, is to remain humble and open up that dialogue and listen. Listening is very key. Listening to the other person and making sure that when you speak to them, you're able to articulate what you mean on certain words, because there are a lot of abstract words where everybody has different definitions on what they mean. So defining that and explaining that is pretty much key. So
Thank you very much. And finally, Dan Bernowski.
Thanks for the great question. And I think something that a lot of folks don't realize is A vast majority of the bills that get passed out of Olympia every session are completely bipartisan. These are common sense, good governance bills that makes life better for the people of the state of Washington. And I'm proud to hop onto every one of those bills and work in partnership and collaboration with people from my own party and people from the Republican Party. It's a great working relationship. And, a couple of examples of some of the things that I've worked on over the past 2 years that were great bipartisan policies was to expand making sure that public employees have the ability to serve in the reserves and the National Guard, regardless of their branch. So as many of you may know, we have a new branch of the Armed Services, the United States Space Force, and we need to make it clear to public employers that those folks who enlist in the Space Force have the opportunity to have paid time off from their public employers and then go serve our country. I was also very happy to be a co-sponsor of a very good Republican bill that would require colorectal cancer pre-screenings. Again, good common sense bills that are going to make life better for the people of our state, regardless of what party it comes from. I'm happy to hop on board, and I'm happy to get good co-sponsors, regardless of the party, for one of my bills, because hey, that's just how good governance is done. And I look forward to continuing that good work on behalf of all of us. Thanks for the question again.
Thank you.
I'm told that no one has registered at the public link. So we're asking the candidates to pass the registration link on, the public link, to anyone that you might, or the people who've inquired, or anyone who might be interested, because there's been a lot of activity with questions posed, but apparently there are some technical difficulties. So if you could pass that on, please, we would greatly appreciate it. The next question: it's currently the policy of Washington State to promote access to affordable, high-quality sexual and reproductive health care, including abortion care, without unnecessary burdens or restrictions on patients or providers. Please describe your position on these protections and whether you would vote to change them or not. And we'll start this question with Mari Levitt, please.
Again, thank you so much for this question. And this is so important for my daughters to have reproductive rights and quality health care. And I am proud of the state of Washington, who the voters have spoken on this issue and advanced the right for women and their families to make personal decisions between themselves and their medical doctor. And I think that's where those decisions lie. I think it's also really important that we protect the data between patients and their doctors and their medical folks that they're working with, to make sure that they are protected, and their personal difficult decisions between women and the families and their doctor are kept between women and the family and the doctor. And protecting those privacy rights is essential. I absolutely will work to ensure that those rights that we have in Washington will never be chipped away. I would not support anything that would take away the rights of my daughters, my granddaughter to be, that's coming in January, and making sure that we have strong reproductive rights for families in Washington state, so that they have safe options and medically sound options to take care of themselves and their families. And those decisions really belong between a woman, her family, her medical physician, and also protecting the data. And I'm really glad that we're going to be taking a look at having sound, strong data privacy rights for those folks, because it's really important that we protect these women, we protect these opportunities and access for safe medical treatment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mari. Gabe Sackwitz, you're next, please.
Yeah, so for a lot of things, if it's working, keep it, use it, and the same thing with people's rights. Yeah, I've always been in professions that protect people's rights, and I will continue to protect everyone's rights, their lives. That is who I am. That is what I do. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Dan Bernowski, please.
Thanks for the question. So you asked a couple of different things. One, on the educational piece. Yeah, absolutely. It's good policy for us to have good, robust education in place for all of our kids to understand, all health aspects that are going to affect their lives, but certainly how our reproductive systems work. That's a key piece for future generations to understand just what happens as we mature, as we age, as things go on. We need to make sure they have a full grasp of what's going on with their bodies. The other piece, what would we do to protect abortion care and health care in the state of Washington? Well, we could do a couple of things, namely, I mentioned it during our last candidate forum. We could really solidify the language that gives Washingtonians the constitutional right to seek an abortion for their health care. And that's something that I absolutely would support, making sure that it's that much more codified, that much more difficult for people that want to take away that right to be able to do so. And I think that's good public policy that the people in the state certainly would support. It would really shore up rights for everyone across the state of Washington, especially women who can become pregnant. So thank you so much for the question.
Thank you, Dan. Susanna Kyleman, please.
Thank you also for the question. So for education of any type, as long as we're putting the students first, and we should at least give parents the option to opt out or at least have their input on this. Patient privacy is always vital, regardless of whatever the topic is. And in our state, a woman's right to choose is and has been protected since before Roe v. Wade, and recent events do not change that. Our state has already spoken, and any change to this protection must be put to a vote of the people, which I will always support. I've dedicated my life to working in healthcare. As a woman, I've suffered a complex miscarriage, so I know that women and their caregivers must sometimes make heartbreaking decisions. Protecting this right will prevent illegal practices that cause further harm, and being informed of all options will save lives. Let's stop using abortion as a tool to further divide us. It's a personal decision, and the government's only role should be to ensure that it is legal and safe for the women of our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna.
Our next question. Washington State's election system of vote by mail and segregation of voting databases and other systems have created election security that has not to date been breached. Additionally, ballot processing can be observed by the public through the political parties and/or the League of Women Voters website to validate this. Have you taken the time to become familiar with the steps of processing the ballots employed by the Pierce County Auditor? And what additional measures, if any, do you believe are necessary for voters of Washington State to be confident that election outcomes will be fair and accurate? For this question, we're going to start with Dan Bernowski.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I've been voting in every election that I've been eligible for since I was the age of 18. And every single election that I have participated in has been conducted in a way that I have always felt confident that was completely secure. My ballot was counted, and there were no questions that election was completely secure, and my ballot was counted. And certainly that goes for every other person who votes. And I'm not talking about just a partisan race like mine. I'm talking about things like merging fire districts and school bonds and things like that. We can't function as a society unless we continue to ensure that we have access to the ballot. And access to the ballot is key in that how can you be confident in the system if we make it difficult for people to vote? So I'm really excited that Washington, has very strict processes to make sure that there's integrity. People are trained every election cycle to come in and observe the election take place, observe election officials count each ballot and make sure that everything is sorted and processed properly. And it's great that, you can drop your ballot in the mailbox and it gets counted that way. Because it's so easy to vote in that capacity where I could put my ballot in a secure drop box or trust it with the post office, which I already have. I've already voted and I dropped my ballot in the mail the day I got it because by gum, I have confidence in our elections and I hope all of you do too. Thanks.
Thank you. Next will be Susanna Carolyn.
Yeah, so I support a hybrid model. If people like to vote in person, that's their right. If they feel more comfortable doing it by mail, of course, they should be able to do so. Regardless of the method that they vote, they should be voting, hopefully. But there should also be some type of transparency or accountability measures so they can ensure that their vote was counted. And I hear about this from people on both sides of the aisle and from people that have observed elections either as volunteers or just being a private citizen. You know, as a former military spouse, as someone that was active duty overseas previously, there have been times when I received my ballot after the fact, and it was way too late for my vote to be returned and be accounted for. That's extremely frustrating. And when I talk to gentlemen or service members and their families that also don't receive their ballots, and I hear from others that are volunteering to match those ballots up with service members, that they can't do it for whatever reason, and those ballots are destroyed. So I would like to see more accountability from the time that the ballot actually leaves to the time it actually reaches the citizen themselves, and then to the time it actually gets counted. And then I do want to enforce, or at least be a proponent of or advocate for, strict ID requirements in order to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Mari Levitt.
Thank you so much for the question. And I'm really proud of Washington State. We have one of the best election systems in the country and have been recognized for that. We had a great state auditor who ensured and expanded vote.wa.gov. So you can check when you send off your ballot by mail, you can check to see if it's been received and if it's been done that. The question was, have you participated in the process to learn about how a ballot is tracked and how it's counted? And the answer is yes. I have had the opportunity to tour the Pierce County Elections Department and observed ballots and observed our workers doing extraordinary toll work to make sure that our ballots are counted with integrity. And if there was a question, I've watched them take a look at it and ensure that they're doing that. I've also had a good conversation with the Pierce County auditor. And the reality is we have a strong system and our state has a strong system. And because our auditors work closely together as a state, with the Secretary of State, we ensure the integrity of our election system. I think, mail-in ballots, I have to tell you, I used to take our daughter to the poll and I was super sad when the polls, because I loved going. But I know that the reason we moved to mail-in ballots, one, we examined and increased access, but it also saved taxpayers dollars, both in Pierce County and in the state. So I think it's very, very important that we make sure that we continue to expand access for all of our citizens to have the right to vote, because it is one of our most sacred rights. And we have an incredibly strong system in Washington State with transparency and accountability to ensure that our ballots count and our vote counts. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Gabe Sackwitz.
So I have not observed the process, but mail-in voting, it's pretty convenient. But at the same time, we also, if people want to go to the polls and vote, they should be allowed to. We claim to live in a free society, so we should freely be able to go to the polls if we want to vote or mail in our ballots. The more pressing issue, though, that everyone should be concerned about is our American citizens losing faith within this system. And we should do everything that we can to make sure that our fellow Americans are not losing faith in the system, because that is what our foreign enemies want. And we have an amazing system here in this country. And we need to make sure, again, that the people do not lose faith in that system. Very important.
Thank you.
Here's another audience question, or at least these were all called in before the forum began. People may not be viewing it this time, but of course they can view the link later. But a number of people did call or write in with questions. So here's one of them. What is your position on the state's current prohibition against Washington cities enacting rent control? And we'll start with Susanna Kyleman, please.
Yeah, so this kind of depends on who you talk to, right? So if if you talk to a landlord, which I have, and there's rent control, that really caps their ability to have an income or an investment property. However, on the other aspect of it, we need affordable housing, and we can't continue to outprice our citizens out of homes. That's contributing to the homeless population. So I'd like to just establish relationships and find a way where we can all come to the table and collaborate for a manner in which we can promote the entrepreneurship of being a landlord and having income property, as well as solve and contribute to having more affordable housing for our citizens and getting more homeless off of the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. Dan Bernowski next, please.
Thank you so much for the question. Yeah, it's a tough issue, right? I mean, ultimately, what this question is asking is, do you think this particular policy is going to make housing more affordable? And, you know, honestly, it could be a component to more affordable housing. But we need to look at it very carefully. You know, we have data and studies about, you know, just this one issue that it might work in some communities, but it might not work necessarily for others. Ultimately, it's going to take a lot of work and a big collaborative approach that the legislature is actually looking at quite diligently right now to work a couple of different policy levers to make sure that we continue to incentivize more housing to be built, whether it's market rate, affordable housing, subsidized housing, community housing, and whether or not this particular policy that you asked about could play a role in that to help bring down housing costs. There's no question that housing costs have risen exponentially in our communities up and down the I-5 corridor. You're seeing the same problem, and actually the east side of the state isn't immune to housing affordability issues either. So it's a complex issue that has a lot of different policy levers that need to be worked to make sure that it's very effective. But there's no question that this is on all of our radar, that we need to make housing more affordable for everybody because, yeah, we can't price people out of their homes, whether they rent or whether they own. It's going to take a lot of different policies working together to make this right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Gabe Sackwitz next, please.
Yeah, this would be something that needs to be voted on by the people of Washington State, period. You know, it's like, this is a tough one that, okay, we could try this out, but everybody has to be on board with this. And everybody would just need to vote. And if they want to try this out, okay, that's on everybody to do that. But that's what I think.
Thank you. Mari Levitt, please.
Thank you so much for the question. And you know, this is a topic that Washington State struggles with the rising costs of rents. We've seen that during the pandemic, rents stayed stable in part because of COVID and because of some restrictions, but we've seen rents increase and in some areas higher than others. And in fact, rent increases are increasing in Texas as well. I had participated in a great housing presentation, and the challenge for our lowest income earners is their income is not rising. If you're on disabilities and you get $1,000 a month and your rent is increased by $100, $125, $200, you're not going to be able to sustain yourself and being able to afford that. And that's a problem. So we have to look at alternatives and make sure that we're addressing, you know, proper housing, both in supply and other ways to ensure that we have access to affordable housing. Rent control in Washington State as a blanket statement isn't going to work either. And I don't support a blanket opportunity of policy without recognizing that we may lose housing stock. And that also is a consideration that we have to take into consideration and take a look at the impact of whether a rent control policy would have an impact. I'm not convinced that it will and have not seen evidence that that's the case. However, we know that rents are increasing and people can afford it. And the eviction notices are on the rise. Whether they can participate in the mediation process is helpful. Whether they have a right to counsel is helpful as they go through that process. But we have to find a way for housing to be affordable for our residents to sustain themselves and be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mari.
There is a possible nationwide recession looming, and recessions typically bring job loss. What strategies and plans do you have to ensure citizens in your district in Washington State will continue to have access to family wage jobs? For this question, we're going to start with Gabe Sackwitz.
I guess just remove as many restrictions that prevent people from being employed. You know, for example, let's go with teaching. You know, you would need a teaching certificate in order to teach at a school. Well, maybe in order to get some people hired, and supposedly we have a teaching shortage, that would be one avenue and something that we could do. But examples and stuff like that.
Thank you. Next will be Susanna Kalman.
Sure. So I think it sounds funny to plan for a recession because in a way you're planning for failure. So hopefully we can be proactive enough to not do that. And I think it starts with our education system. We can start to implement trade school much earlier and make sure that those employees are being protected, whether it be with proper ergonomics or with proper education and training, but is rewarding and that it's affordable for these people to actually learn that skill so that they can provide for themselves and their families. So I think we need to get ahead of the problem. We need to actually start looking at our education system and looking at the curriculums that are being taught, look at the options that are comparable to, if university is not your thing, let's have an option for you, but let's make sure that the trades that we are teaching and the trades that we're promoting in these professions are actually somewhat recession proof. So that way, when or if a recession does come, those jobs are already in place. And we can also have sustainable means to actually keep paying the workers involved. It's extremely important that we get ahead of this problem. We never want to be reactive because by then it's extremely too late. So if there's anything that we can do to proactively salvage this area of expertise, but we already have some really great trade schools and tech schools in the 28th district. So I'd like to get the feedback of the administrators and the people that have recently graduated as well, have been in this field for years, and get their input on other things that we can do.
Thank you. Next will be Mari Levitt.
Thank you so much for the question. And this is so important. We saw in 2008, 2009, when we had the last Great Recession, in terms of not great in the definition of Great Recession, but the last recession in Washington State, we were reactive and we cut our community and technical colleges, and they have never really climbed back. We were starting to get back there in investment up until 2020, and then COVID hit. And then we kind of rolled back again. And so we have to continue to invest in our workforce and our workforce development. I've sponsored a bill in House Bill 1033 that, working with small businesses, it provided opportunities for workers to get training and our small businesses to get state dollars to do some of that training and to get reimbursed. And we need our workers to be nimble and our industries to be nimble. And we have to support those in terms of making sure that we're supporting our small businesses. We're finding ways to address the unemployment tax burden, because when a person for a small business is unemployed, that's a huge hit for our small businesses. And fortunately, we were able to save our small businesses in that unemployment cliff that was about to go fall off. But we have to look at workforce development. We have to shore up our small businesses and provide and set up success. And we have to help our workers be nimble and have opportunity to make sure, so when they are in that situation, that they have options to go to and we can support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Dan Bernowski.
Great question. And I just like to say that, regardless of what the economic conditions are, we need to continue to make sure that the workforce of the future has the skills they need to succeed in the industries that they're going to be needed most. So, hey, I'm a product of our local CTC system, Community Technical College system. I went to Bates Technical College, and that's where I first started to learn my love of working with my hands and understanding that there are several opportunities out there. Yes, college and higher ed is a great pathway for some, but I tell you what, for others like me, it's working with your hands and getting into the trades. And my trade is firefighting. I've spoken with a ton of folks out there that are doing good work right now, not only at the community college level, but local groups that are expanding opportunities with apprenticeships. We're talking about things like helmets to hard hats, where somebody that's getting out of the military can transition into a building trades job. That's a good, decent paying job that they can enjoy for the rest of their lives if they transition out of the military. I talked with carpenters who have a great educational group where they reach out to high school students to get them into the trades in high school and get them down that apprenticeship path. And personally, I'm proud to sponsor a bill that actually did expand apprenticeship opportunities for substance use disorder professionals, for folks in the healthcare sector that traditionally doesn't have access to apprenticeships. We're expanding that. We're getting outside of the building trades and we're getting into other industries. So that way people are going to have the education they need to be successful in the trades and the jobs that we need them to be in most. And I look forward to continuing that work. Thanks.
Thank you all. This will be the last question. We've had a lot of good discussion tonight. Let's do 60 seconds for this last question before our closing statements, please. And the question is, as a legislator, you will represent the interests of your district, but you also are responsible for decisions that affect citizens statewide. How will you balance those responsibilities when they conflict? And we'll begin with Mari Levitt, please.
Thank you so much for this question. I am proud to serve the 28th Legislative District and the 28th residents and their families and their children and their grandchildren is my priority as I go to work each and every day. And that's what I consider first and foremost. I'm also, really honored to be able to support our rural folks over in Eastern Washington. As a state legislator, we have opportunities, in the Puget Sound area to support our rural partners on the East to make sure that we are investing and by providing an example for healthcare workers to get loan forgiveness if they want to work in a rural hospital because we know that they need workers, or they want to work in a supported living situation and get trained for different industries in our part. We also invested in the rural economic development. And so my priority is my district. And I also am proud to serve the Washington residents across our district and beyond. But certainly I think of you first and I work for you first. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Bernowski, please.
Yeah, thank you. So it is a balance. It is a balance that we do represent our legislative district, and that is our job. But also we need to meet the needs of the state as a whole within the best of our abilities. And I think we do a good job of recognizing that balance and certainly prioritizing the needs of the people of our district. We have a lot of unique needs, and I think that's okay. I mean, we have JBLM completely within our district, and it is our duty to represent the folks that not only live on post, but work on post to make sure that they have the resources they need to be good members of our community to be able to continue to live here. So there's that balance with the federal level too. But also recognizing that, like what Representative Levitt said, supporting our rural economies is key to our success. We don't grow a whole lot of food in our district. We have to import it from the east side of the state. So making sure that we have the means to get goods and services from Eastern Washington, the members of our district, is absolutely important too. So that's another part of the balance that I hope people realize. Thanks.
Thank you. Gabe Sackwitz, please.
It's simple. Just be fair. That's it. Be fair and don't show any favoritism to any one particular group or organization or anything like that. Just be fair. Simple.
All right, thank you. Susanna Kyleman, please.
Yeah, so obviously I live here in DuPont in the district. I'm very active in the community. I have tons of friends here, but more importantly, if I'm an elected official, it's going to be my job as well, a privilege and an honor to serve the people of my district first. I will always try to do a balanced act when it comes to what's important to the state as a whole. And something that I've learned in healthcare is you have to triage. You have to kind of take what's the most important thing at this matter at this moment in time. And if we can do that and just work with each other collaboratively, I think everyone's going to be okay. But my first interest is within my district. I'm going to see you at a coffee shop. I'm going to see you out to eat when I'm with my parents. My goal is to ensure that you are well provided for. So that's what I look forward to the most, and that's what I'll do. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna.
Now it is time for closing statements, and closing statements will be in reverse order of the opening statements, and they will be 1 minute each. So for this, we will start with Susanna Kalman.
Yeah, thank you again to the League of Women Voters and those that tuned in. If you still have a question for me, please feel free to contact me through the campaign website, which is voteforsusanna.com. It's been such an honor to connect with the community. We have all noticed a shift that has gone too far in one direction, and as a result, we are less safe and spending more. We are all one circumstance away from a different life and have come too far to repeat the same failed policies. We frankly can't afford to. Our lives and our livelihood are on the ballot. The issues are on the ballot. As a state, we can take these lessons learned from the past 2 years and move forward in a way where we are united. It's time to let go of the hate and work towards solutions that treat the core of the issues. I'm not an extremist. I will put people before party and know that the government should be limited and for the people. As a representative, my goal is to listen, keep things balanced, and again, find the common ground. It would be an honor to have you vote. Please vote for Susanna Kyleman for state representative. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. Next will be Dan Bernowski.
Thanks again, everyone, for taking the time tonight to listen to all of us. Yeah, this is a lot of work, creating policy, creating things that will have a good benefit for not only the people of our district, but for the people of our state. Requires a lot of effort, a lot of work, a lot of collaboration between members of our party, members of the Republican Party, and then people from the community as well. I've been an effective legislator over the past 2 years, working very hard and very diligently for all of us to make sure that there's a balance between the needs of our community and the needs of our state. And I'll continue to work very hard and very diligently for all of us to make sure that we have every opportunity to succeed that we can. Again, continue to work on things like bringing down costs, access to healthcare, make sure healthcare is affordable, making sure people have the ability to go to work, to a good paying job, all these things that will enable us to thrive. I'm committed to continuing to work on, and I can't do it without your support. So I'd be honored to have your vote. Thanks again.
Thank you, Dan. Next will be Gabe Sackwitz.
Yeah, you guys, thank you. Thank you for this. I appreciate it. But people are sick and tired of party loyalists and politicians bickering and fear-mongering over sensational topics. They want somebody who represents them, not somebody who is trying to advance a political career. People want representatives that they can communicate with and will communicate that message be strong enough to communicate that message to Olympia. There are consequences when voting for horrible legislation, like daytime robberies, with somebody just robbing a store and just walking away with no fear. This is something that I witnessed. Or teenagers telling their friends it is okay to drive away from the police because they're not going to chase you. There's consequences to these, as well as legislators who allow the governor to continue emergency powers for almost 3 years need to understand that has negatively impacted so many people's lives. I've already proven through a number of professions that I will continue to fight for people's rights and protect their lives, and I will not stop. My loyalty is to the people. I am of the people, for the people, by the people. I'm here for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Finally, Mari Levitt.
Well, thank you again so much to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and to all of you who are watching, who were able to get in, and who will watch in the future. We're grateful for your engagement in the democratic process. And I mentioned earlier, I'm really proud of my proven record of working together and to solve really important issues to residents in the 28th Legislative District. And I'll continue to work for real people on these solutions, working with my colleagues across the aisle and making sure that our residents and our families are successful, making sure that our businesses thrive and are successful, and making sure that we have clean air and clean water for our children and our grandchildren to breathe and to bathe in. I'm proud of the endorsements of all 3 law enforcement agencies, of the WACOPS, the Fraternal Order of Police, as well as the Washington State Patrol, business, labor, healthcare, and a host of others, because they know that I'm a proven person who will work together, listen to the people, and listen to good ideas to ensure we craft policy that are good for the residents of the 28th, as well as the state of Washington. Thank you so much, and I'm honored to have your consideration of your vote.
Thank you to the candidates this evening. For House Seat 1, Mari Levitt and Gabe Sackwitz. For House Seat 2, Dan Bernowski and Susanna Kyleman. Thank you to Terry Baker, our timer.
Thank you also to the nonpartisan co-sponsors in alphabetical order: AAUW Puyallup and Tacoma, Asia Pacific Cultural Center, Grit City Co-op, Latinos Unidos of South Sound, NAACP, Senco, South End Neighborhood Council, Summit Waller Community Association, Tacoma-Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium, Urban League, Vibrant Schools, and YWCA. Be sure to mail your ballots in before Election Day, November 8th, or put them in a drop box no later than 8 p.m. on Election Day, again, November 8th.
Before you vote, also check out the League of Women Voters online voters guide, vote411.org, and go to votewa.org to check your voter registration. Both sites identify ballot issues and candidate information specific to your own voting precinct. We encourage everyone to use these resources in addition to the standard voters guide. You'll find our other candidate forums and a link to the recording for this one at our website, lwvtpc.org. Thank you for participating tonight. And have a great evening, everyone.